So out of this, what can we take? It's two-way interaction, teaching and learning. Scaffolding dyad, and asymmetrical. It's not interaction between peers. Skewed. Someone leading, mentoring someone into the culture. I don't know if you know Deb Roy's work. He's a Canadian cognitive scientist who works at MIT. And he has a project called the Human Speech Home Project, where he tape recorded everything that went on in his flat for the first 3 years of his child's life and produced then culled 100,000 hours or so of audiovisual recording of everything that happened. Cameras in the ceiling, looking down, microphones, and if you want an introduction, these TED Talks, you can look at one of these TED Talks and see him giving a popularization of his research there. So there's the subject arriving home from hospital, ready to go. We're going to tape everything from there, and there's the kind of thing it looks like. But they have this wonderful technology, even though the camera's from the ceiling, you can turn it around and look at it in all different directions. That's everything. At one point in this presentation, he said something quite relevant to what I'm saying. So every time my son would learn a word, we would trace back and look at all of the language he heard that contained that word. And we would plot the relative length of the utterances. And what we found was this curious phenomenon, that caregiver speech would systematically dip to a minimum, making language as simple as possible, and then slowly ascend back up in complexity. And the amazing thing was that bounce, that dip, lined up almost precisely with when each word was formed, word after word, systematically. So it appears that all three primary caregivers, myself, my wife, and our nanny, were systematically, and I would think subconsciously, restructuring our language to meet him at the birth of a word and bring him gently into more complex language. And the implications of this, there are many, but one I just want to point out is that there must be amazing feedback loops. Of course my son is learning from his linguistic environment, but the environment is learning from him. That environment, people, are in these tight feedback loops and creating a kind of scaffolding that has not been noticed until now. If you know me, you know that I can be a little bit critical of the inward-looking centripetal nature of North American research. But I still find this sort of thing absolutely astounding that someone can say something like this. But anyway, it popularizes and reinforces the things that Vygotsky and Halliday and Painter and Bruner have been saying for decades and decades and decades. And has this wonderful corpus to show. Now, it's cognitive science, incredibly naive theory of language. There are words, and everything else in it is incredibly naive. Complexity has to do with the number of words in an utterance, all these things that are horrifying to a linguist, but still, okay, some more support. And if you're trying to talk about these ideas to people who aren't aware of linguistic theories of what's going on, then it's very accessible thing to point them to. Now, the other thing I'd like to add is that it's one very natural aspect of the scaffolding dyad to talk about language. Language is part of the environment in this mentoring dyad, and the mothers, parents, children talk about language as they learn language. So I'll just give you some examples here from Painter's work. So her son, I put the ages here, I don't know if you were following it, 2 years, 2.5 years of age. They're going to the child care center, and they've got a little form that they're giving back to the center. And Stephen, the child, says, "I've got a paper." And the carer says, "Oh, let's have a look. What's on the paper? Do you know?" "That's words. That's words." Or he's got a raincoat with a little toggle that fits inside a little loop. And it's missing, and he's going, "I need a coat. A coat. What's it called?" A little older, a year later, "You're naughty boys to throw them up there," throwing things on top of the wardrobe. Hal did it, the older brother, by accident. "Well, Hal's naughty then." "No, by accident. That's not naughty. That means you say sorry." Fine word differentiation. Approaching mother holding up a complicated Duplo structure, kind of Lego structure. Balance means you hold it on your fingers and it doesn't go on the floor. Age of going to school, Mummy, it's a question that you don't eat porridge with your fingers. It's a question that you don't eat porridge with your fingers. That's not a question, it's an order. What's an order? It's something that you tell somebody and they have to do it. I meant an order. A little speech act theory for you. Here's some examples from my kids. I didn't study them formally, but informally I remember them, these things being in my mind as they were going on, and any parent would recognize them if they were looking for them. So they have a Canadian father who likes to tease them all the time, tricking daddy, joking. What does drown mean? I know what running comes from. Run. That says daddy, looking at a piece of my writing, or walking along the sidewalk pavement, looking in concrete blocks, one concrete block after another. My son's called Hamish, looking down. That's my H. See the shape? Handbag has got B. My older sister called Phoebe. If Phoebe didn't have a silent O, it would be Fubby. When they were young, they called parrots, rainbow lorikeets, carrots. And I persisted, calling them carrots ever since. They go, not carrot, Daddy, parrot. And they tried working on my Canadian vowels as well, failing miserably over the decades. All the time, talking about language. Why not? Halliday writes, commenting, the earliest linguistic terms an English-speaking child learns to use are not terms like noun and verb, or even word and sentence. They're in fact not nouns at all, they're typically verbs, typically say, mean, we saw examples, and certainly afterwards tell. We saw Nigel also has a clear concept of naming at 20 months, at 24 months, what's that called? By the time he's 2 years old, the child has a considerable awareness of the nature and functions of language. When he starts to talk, he's not only using language, he's also beginning to talk about it. He's constructing a folk linguistics in which saying and naming meaning denote different aspects of the same symbolic act. So the crucial issue is not whether knowledge about language is relevant to language learning. We use knowledge about language, the folk linguistics, all the time in learning language in the home before school. The question is whether that folk linguistics is good enough for institutionalized learning, or whether we need professionally informed, uncommon sense knowledge about language. I'll use Ron Cotter's KAL, CAL, for that in our literacy programs, and how much of the knowledge teachers and students need to share. So this is all a great diatribe against Chomsky, isn't it? It doesn't happen by magic. You don't drop the child into the linguistic environment, immerse them, and it all just happens. It's hard work. Any of you have parented or been older siblings of young children know how tiring and exhausting it is. And I can certainly confess as a parent, saying many times to my children, shut up, meaning I can't do it anymore. I can't teach you anymore today. I'm too tired. And they're relentless, relentless. Teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me.